Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Danielle and I'm the owner of Damn Fancy Creations and the Drunk Flamingo Glitter. If you guys are new to my channel, I do want to let you know that all of my links and groups are posted in the description below in case y'all want to check them out. In today's tutorial, we're going to cover everything you see listed here. I am so excited about this tumbler. I used several different techniques such as the ink swirl, peekaboo, glitter waterfall, and then hand drawing the holly and berries with paint pens. And then I decided to do a fun shaker bottom with some cute Christmas sprinkles, and I love how it turned out, and I hope you guys do as well. If you guys have any questions about products or techniques that I did, please just let me know in the comment section and I will come back and answer them for you. But for now, we're going to go ahead and get started on this tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications for my channel so you guys will be the first to see new tutorials that drop. All right, guys, let's get started. Okay, y'all, so we are going to start with a tumbler that has been painted white. My white of choice is flat white from Rust-Oleum. Then I'm just going to apply some epoxy all over the entire tumbler once that spray paint has dried. And for the ink swirl, dropping inks into epoxy, things like that, I typically add a little bit more epoxy than I normally would, just so the inks have enough epoxy to kind of move around. I did go ahead and remove the bottom to this tumbler. I did film it, but for some reason the video messed up and it stopped recording. So I will link a tutorial now in case you guys want to see how I remove the bottom of my tumblers. This is a 24 plump from the Steel Magnolias. If you guys have not tried them, she has awesome tumblers. Her lids are amazing, and on most of her tumblers, you can remove the bottom cap, so you can do fun things like glitter butts. You can bling them, or like we're going to do today, is basically treat it like a shaker keychain, and we're going to make a shaker bottom. So once all of the epoxy is on my tumbler, I'm just gathering some green inks that I had. I had several different colors from Brea Reese, Tim Holtz, I think some from Let's Resin. I like to have a variety of brands because some inks are more opaque, some are more transparent, so I like to kind of have a variety. I believe this one is called Lettuce by Tim Holtz. And I am applying my lighter greens first, moving towards my darker greens. And then I will go in with my white and gold and kind of blend everything together. I believe this one is Kelly Green from Brea Reese. And I'm just dropping the inks in the open space or the blank space. So wherever I see white, I am dropping inks. And then I'm also overlapping the color that I already dropped just a little bit. And since this is going to be a peekaboo, I did not really focus on applying the inks to the very top or the very bottom of the tumbler, just because I knew that that was going to be left white anyway. So again, I'm just going in and dropping the inks in the blank space. And as your tumbler turns, the inks will spread out and fill a little bit more space. While I'm finishing up these inks, I do want to mention that I am using Artistry's 1:1 ratio fast set. It is my favorite fast setting epoxy. It has no odor, which is amazing, even though you should still wear your respirator. It can also be used as a final coat. It does not have any type of smell after the epoxy is cured as well. And it has great UV inhibitors. If you guys have not tried Artistry, but maybe want to give them a try, I do have their link and a discount code in the description below. I am also going to be using Artistry's glitter glue later on in this tutorial. So I do suggest picking up a bottle of that if you're going to be shopping on their site. So I'm going to use this liquid gold leaf. This is my favorite color. I just picked this up at Hobby Lobby. I believe you can also get it off Amazon. I will link it below if you can. But I just take just a tiny amount of this and just mix my popsicle stick in the epoxy. I do not drop this directly onto the cup. I mix it in epoxy and then I kind of make some lines back and forth. I'm also going to do the same thing with white alcohol ink. I'm going to be using the Pinata brand. This white is the thickest white alcohol ink. And for that reason, I also mix it in epoxy before I apply it to my cup. And for my preference, I do not like the big globs of white, which is why I just kind of make small lines on the tumbler. If you like the big globs of white, then you would apply the ink just directly to your cup. And I did add a little bit more ink than I normally would, but it still worked out fine. So it is a little bit more thin than it usually would be. But I still don't get those big globs. Now, I like to take my spatula, just my silicone spatula, and then I am just going to hold the spatula onto the tumbler and let it turn. Again, this is just my preference. I like my colors kind of blended more together. I don't like those weird splotchy ink blots. I also don't have my heat gun down here. I don't really like to use it just because if you heat it too much, you can get too much movement. So this way, if I just barely drag my spatula along the cup, those colors still get nicely blended. You will still get cells that pop up, which is what I like. And I don't have any thick color blots of certain colors, if that makes sense. I hope it does. Sometimes explaining art things is hard. And again, I'm not really concentrating on the bottom because it's going to be white anyway. We're just using this green for our peekaboo. So the majority of this will be covered up. So as it spins, you can kind of look at your colors. If you want to go back and add more green at this point, you can. If you want to add more blues or whites, whatever, you definitely can do that. I did have a few spots that were a little bit more white than I wanted, so I just went back in and dropped a few more drops of the green ink. And then again, I just took my little spatula and just kind of blended that green into the rest of the tumbler. And again, I am just letting the tumbler glide along the spatula. I'm not using any force because I'm not trying to remove any of the epoxy. I'm just trying to blend it. So now we're going to take the gold leaf that is mixed in with our epoxy, and I'm just going to do thin lines of this epoxy and just go back and forth. This will also spread like the ink. So I always start with a little bit, and then if I want to go back and add more, I can. But you don't want to add too much to start with, because then you'll just get a big gold blob, which is not what we want. I just wanted a little bit of gold accents kind of shining through my Christmas trees that will be a peekaboo. So I'm going to wipe off my spatula just to get that green off of there for now. And then I'm going to go back and just blend that gold in. Again, not using any pressure. I'm just holding that spatula on the side of the cup. So that way that gold is more soft. There's not going to be harsh lines. So when we do our peekaboo, everything will be nice and blended together. So once you're happy with how your cup is looking, I am going to take my torch and I'm going to torch it for one full rotation just to pop any bubbles. And then I'm going to apply a second layer of epoxy to this tumbler just to make sure everything is covered and smooth and ready for our decals. So here's our tumbler after the second coat of epoxy. Everything is smooth. I really like how this looked. I thought it would be really cool for the peekaboo Christmas trees. I just cut out these Christmas trees about 1 inch because I wanted them to be pretty small. And I'm going to use painter's tape as my guides and spacers. So I am just going to wrap this entire tumbler with painter's tape. That way I will have a nice guide for where I'm going to apply my Christmas trees, and they will all be even around the entire cup. So I know I'm not going to have Christmas trees on the very bottom or the very top, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the top piece of tape, and I'm going to remove the second piece, and this is where our Christmas trees are going to start. So I'm just going to take my tweezers and we're going to apply one of our Christmas trees, and then I'm going to flip the cup over and we're going to apply it directly on the other side. I just eyeball mine. I'm not necessarily a stickler for perfection. I try to get them as close of a match as I can. So I'm just putting these Christmas trees between the other two. And if it looks pretty even, I will be happy with it. So next we're going to remove 2 more pieces of tape. And we're going to apply our Christmas tree in between the trees that we just applied. I just like the staggered look. Again, this is all preference. If you want your Christmas trees closer together, if you want them directly on top of each other, you can definitely do that. You would just remove 1 piece of tape instead of 2, and your Christmas trees would be closer together. But I just liked the staggered look. Then we're removing 2 more pieces of tape. And then we're going to line up these Christmas trees with the first Christmas trees that we applied. So I was pretty happy with how this was looking. So I removed the last 2 pieces of tape, and I decided that I should go ahead and put a piece on the very bottom just so my Christmas trees were even. Which in the end, these very bottom Christmas trees ended up being covered with glitter anyway, but I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do to this cup, so I just went ahead and applied the trees down here as well. And once you get all your Christmas trees on there, I am going to take this cup outside. I am going to spray paint the entire tumbler with flat Rust-Oleum white. And when that is dry, we will be ready for our next step. All right, so now that our spray paint is dry, I am just going to take my tweezers and we're going to remove the Christmas trees. The little stars on the top of my Christmas trees were kind of a stickler to get off because they were so tiny. But I was really liking how this was turning out already. Just the green ink against the bright white of the cup looked really cool. And now y'all can hear my daily train coming through. About every 15 minutes, they come by. So I'm just going to speed up this process just a little bit. We're just removing Christmas trees. And then I kind of had to decide what I wanted to do to the rest of the cup. I was debating on just doing glitter on the bottom or the top, but I decided to do glitter on the top and the bottom and just kind of have the Christmas trees peeking through the middle and a little bit on the top and bottom. So now that these are all removed, I am going to grab some of my Artistry's glitter glue. I told you guys we would be using this. If y'all have not tried it, I definitely suggest getting some. It's how I apply almost all of my glitter now. I used to use clear spray or epoxy, but the ColorFix glitter glue is amazing. It is 100 times better than Mod Podge. You don't get brush strokes. Everything evens out. I just can't even explain it. It's amazing. So we are using this Christmas glitter mix. It is my glitter. It is special for Christmas. It is not released yet, so y'all are getting a sneak peek of a new glitter that will be released closer to the holiday season. So I am just painting a band of this glitter glue around the top, just so I make sure that everything around the top edge is going to be covered. If you are going to be using glitter glue, I do suggest having a cup of water handy or to wash your brush immediately because it does dry pretty hard and it can be really hard to clean your brush out if it dries. So now that my glue is around the top edge of my tumbler, I am just pulling some of that glitter glue down the cup. I am just pulling it about 1/3 of the way down just so I have enough room for the glitter to kind of cascade down the tumbler. So we get that gradient effect, waterfall effect, cascade effect, whatever you want to call it. So now we're going to sprinkle some of the glitter on just around the edge of the cup. This way we know that the top edge is going to be completely covered with glitter, which is what we want. And then we're going to angle the cup a little bit and sprinkle just a little bit of glitter on at a time and let it fall down the tumbler. That one I poured a little bit too much. So I'm just banging it off, and then I will go back and tap down any chunky glitter that is standing up. So next, we are going to take the glitter glue and we're going to do the exact same thing, but to the bottom of our tumbler. So we're just applying a solid line of glitter glue around the bottom rim of the cup, and then we're also going to apply it to the very bottom of the tumbler. Just on the rim, we're not filling the cavities with this glitter color. And then we're going to pull the glitter glue down the cup, again, about 1/3 of the way. So I am just dipping the bottom of the tumbler in the glitter so that the bottom is completely covered. And then we're just going to do the same thing, just sprinkling that glitter down the cup as we have it angled a little bit, so we get that cascade waterfall effect that we are looking for. And once I am happy with how this looks, I am going to make sure that everything is tapped down really well. That way we don't have a whole bunch of chunky glitters poking up when we go to epoxy. I am going to take this downstairs once the glitter glue dries. Typically, glitter glue will dry in about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on what the temperature is, how thick your coats were, all that kind of stuff. So once I know my glitter glue is dried, I will seal this with Rust-Oleum 2 times, and then we will be ready to epoxy it. So here we are again. We are just applying our epoxy. I am just showing this because a lot of times people ask if I can show how I epoxy my cups. I'm not sure if it helps others just to see how I epoxy my tumblers. But I typically start in the middle and pull the epoxy to the bottom, and then I wipe my cups from bottom to top just to smooth out the epoxy and get off any excess epoxy. This little guy that I am epoxying now was an exclusive tutorial for my mentorship group. If you guys are interested in that, I do have that linked in the description as well. And for tumblers this size, these are 24 ounces. I typically use about 15 mils of epoxy for each coat. It might take a little bit more if the tumbler was completely covered with glitter, because that glitter will soak up the epoxy versus a plain spray painted tumbler. And for the bottom, I just do a very, very thin coat just to make sure that glitter is covered. We don't want any epoxy pools or bumps or bubbles or anything like that. So I just apply the tiniest amount. And once I get everything epoxied, I am going to take my torch. I was just kind of moving around any glitter that may have shifted. I think I had a couple chunky pieces that were a little further up than I wanted them. So we're just torching our cup, and then we will be ready to move on. So here is our tumbler after 2 more coats of epoxy. I did sand around the rim and the edges, got any chunky points sanded down, and I could not decide what I wanted to do with this cup. I debated on outlining the Christmas trees with gold, but I felt like it just needed something extra. So I decided I was going to draw some holly leaves and berries with my Posca paint pens. So I'm just going to let you guys watch how I do this, I guess. I don't know why I decided to do this, but I ended up loving the end result. I really liked the combination of kind of the more traditional, classy Christmas trees, and then the holly and berries looked more cartoonish, and the combination of those two styles I really enjoyed. And Posca paint pens are my favorite paint pens. They last forever. They have a felt tip, so it's not that hard plastic. And I was just drawing the basic holly leaf shape. Nothing too fancy. We're just drawing leaves. I have people all the time that are just like, I can't believe you just freehand this stuff. But y'all, it's really not hard. I don't really think it's anything special. It's just leaves and red circles. So if I can do it, y'all can do it too. And I promise, like, at this stage, it doesn't look like it's going to turn out good. But I did draw a few samples on paper first to see if I would like how it looked with the berries and then the black outline. And I really liked it, so I just decided to go for it on the cup. So I'm just going to speed this part up just a little bit. So I basically just went around the entire cup. I did one leaf more facing the right and then one leaf more facing the left. I did overlap some leaves, which I will go back and detail with my black paint pens. Some of them I had hanging off the cup. And there's my train again. And once I get all of my green holly leaves on, I'm going to take my red paint pen and I'm just going to go in and add some red berries, which are basically just red circles. And I tried to keep the red berries kind of bunched around where the base of the leaves would be. So I was pretty happy with this. So now I'm just grabbing my red pen. And I did make sure that the green was completely dry before I started adding the red because I didn't want the colors to combine. So we're just adding sets of 3. I don't know why I do 3. 3 is my favorite number. So I do most things in 3s. And I added some kind of peeking out of the leaves. Like this one is kind of poking out of the leaf. This one is kind of poking out of the leaf. So once I get all of my red berries on there, I'm going to take my black paint pen. And now I'm just going to go and outline all of the leaves and berries. So this just gives definition. I'm just adding some little accent lines and dots to them. So to me, it just makes the cup a little bit more playful. So it's kind of a combination between a pretty cup and a fun cup. And the same thing for the black, as I said with the red. Just make sure that your paint pens that were already on the cup are completely dry because we don't want any smudges. So this was one leaf that was overlapping another one. So you just kind of pick which one you want to be on top and which one you want on bottom, and just draw your detailing lines accordingly. So for this leaf, I made it on top of the other one. So this one is underneath. But doing stuff like this is one of the most relaxing things to me about doing tumblers. Anything with hand drawing or hand painting, I find super relaxing. So after I got done doing this cup, I thought, man, that would be really fun to just do an entire tumbler covered in the paint penned holly and berries. So I might do that. I don't know. So once you get done with this top rim, I'm going to do the exact same thing to the bottom rim of my tumbler, and then we are going to epoxy again. After I use my paint pens and apply them to the tumbler, I don't seal them. I have never had issues with my paint pens bleeding or anything like that. If you guys feel more comfortable sealing your paint pens, you can. Just be careful with what you try to seal it with, because certain sealers may actually cause it to bleed. But I just loved how this tumbler was turning out. I think it was super cute. I love the gold and the Christmas trees kind of shimmering in the light. And I like the kind of traditional but also playful feel the tumbler gives off. I think it's super fun. So after we get our tumbler completely finished, we will then be ready to do the bottom of our tumbler. Okay guys, so here is the fun part. We're going to do our glitter butt. I have some epoxy mixed up and my glitter is already picked out. So I typically just do 2 different glitters. Maybe I'll bling it. But my friend Kimberly Hobbs, I will link her social below. I saw her post in the Steel Magnolias a snow globe or shaker bottom, and I thought it was super cute. And I had 2 cups waiting for me to do the glitter butt on them. So I thought I am going to try this shaker butt. That is one thing I love about the tumbler community, is people are always coming up with new ideas to improve or just put their own spin on things. It's just a never-ending creative cycle that I think is so fun. So to start the shaker bottom or the snow globe bottom, whichever one you want to do, we're going to start the same way I do my glitter butts in general, which is just fill one cavity with one color. So we're just using the same glitter we did previously, and we're just filling that cavity. The small one usually takes me about 5 mils of epoxy. So I am just filling that up, and then we're going to fill the larger center cavity with just a white glitter. Now, if you're doing a regular glitter butt, you're just going to fill that cavity up. But since we're going to be adding sprinkles and making this a fun shaker, or if you want to add some water and make it a snow globe, we're just going to add a very thin layer of the white glitter, just so the base has a little bit of glitter on it and you aren't looking at the metal. But we don't want it to be as high as normal so that the clay sprinkles and glitter have enough room to kind of move around. So I'm just applying a little bit, and then I am just smoothing that epoxy to the edge. So we are going to let this cure, and then we'll be ready for our next step. So once these butts have cured, we're going to take some acetate. This is just a roll of acetate. I believe I purchased it off of Amazon. I will link it in the description below for you guys. And I'm just going to trace around the bottom of my tumbler, just so I know how big I need to make this little acetate cover. And I'm just going to cut around it. I'm cutting just on the inside of my Sharpie line, just so we're not going to have blue Sharpie under our epoxy. So that fits pretty well. We want it to sit on top of the smaller cavity that we filled with glitter. So that fits perfectly. I was happy with that size. So we're going to do the same thing for the pink tumbler that we have here. This pink tumbler is actually a fun Christmas ornament topper tumbler that is an exclusive tutorial in my mentorship group as well. Again, all of my groups are linked below in case you guys want to check them out. My mentorship is called my Damn Fancy Tribe. So I was happy with that size as well. So now that we have our acetate sheets cut out, we're going to take some UV resin. My UV resin of choice right now is Counterculture's. And we're going to take whatever items we're going to fill it with. I am using bottled water. I've heard that that is better for snow globes. Mold won't grow in it since it's been treated. And I am just going to pick out the pink and blue candy pieces. Y'all are getting another sneak peek of a new item that is coming to the Drunk Flamingo. And I am adding just some snowflakes in here. And I am just pouring some water in here, but I will tell you guys, if I do another bottom like this, I will do it differently. I would put the acetate on first and then use a little syringe and kind of poke a little hole in the acetate and fill the cavity up with water, and then apply a little bit of UV resin on top of that little hole and cure it. I did end up going back and doing that when I filled the cavity a little bit more with water, but it was much easier to do it that way. So I'll probably do another video and show you guys my new way of doing it. Sometimes you figure out stuff like after you do it one time and then think, oh, this would have been a better way to do it. But if you don't have a syringe that has a sharp point, this way is also fine. So I am just putting a little bit of UV resin on the exterior cavity, which is the little pink one. And then I am laying my acetate on top of that, making sure that the edges are all touching that UV resin. And then we're just going to hold our light on top of that. And I'm just kind of pressing down the different sections just to make sure that the acetate is attached well. And that no water is leaking out of there. And once we have that part cured, we are going to apply just a little bit more of UV resin just on top of the edges of the acetate. And then we're going to cure that with the UV lamp as well. So after we get this UV resin cured, we're going to set this aside. I do not use UV resin to seal shaker keychains or anything like that, because I have had my acetate warp on me when I seal it with UV resin. So I prefer just to seal my bottom of my tumblers or molds or anything with regular epoxy. So you can see that there is still a lot of air in here. So I did end up going back with a syringe and adding a little bit more water. And I figured out that that way would probably work better to begin with. So that is what I will do from now on. I will seal everything in just like I'm doing with this tumbler. And then I will go back and add the water. So for this cup, I thought that these cute little sprinkles would be perfect. It went with the tumbler. And this one is just going to be a shaker one. So I'm just going to take my acetate, and we're doing the same thing that we did with the first tumbler, which is taking a little bit of that UV resin and applying it along that first little cavity. We're just doing a very, very thin line. We don't need much. We just need it to hold that acetate down. And I'm making sure my sprinkles are all flat. And then we're just going to press that acetate down, and we're going to cure it with the light. And once that is cured, we're going to do the same thing again, which is take that UV resin, apply a thin layer on top of the edges of the acetate, and we're going to cure that. And then you have a shaker bottom. So we obviously still need to seal this so it's very well protected. So I am mixing up about 20 mils of Artistry's Fast Set Epoxy, and I'm going to cover the entire bottom of both of these tumblers. Everything has already been sealed really well with UV resin, but now we need to seal the top part of this acetate sheet. So I'm just bringing this epoxy just up to the edge. We want to make sure that this layer of epoxy is below the tumbler rim, so everything sits level. And once we have that filled, we are going to grab our torch, pop all of the bubbles, and then our tumbler will be finished. So here are some finished pictures of this cup. I really love how it turned out. I think it's super fun, really cute. And of course, the shaker bottom edition was so fun to do. Again, I saw this from Kimberly Hobbs. I will link her in my description below in case you guys want to check out her creations as well. But that is pretty much it, guys, and I hope y'all enjoyed this tutorial, and please be sure to post your creations if you give this one a try. If y'all enjoyed this tutorial or learned something new, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to catch the next video coming up that was picked just for you. As always, if you're looking for more tips, tricks, or tutorials, be sure to check out my tutorial group or my mentorship group. Both are linked in the description. Thanks for watching.